I'm here, Dirk Rohwedder, Director at the SEEDBED Social Accelerator Program, and I'm here to tell you a little bit more about the actual Accelerator Program, but also putting into a context sort of within the kind of social finance and social investment spectrum. So I'm just trying to kind of provide a bit of kind of raison d'etre to the Accelerator Program and why we're doing it. So just in terms of context then and history, it's a partnership between Dartington Trust, which is a large social enterprise in the area, Plymouth University, the first social enterprise university in the country, and Southwest Investment Group, one of the community development finance organizations based here in the Southwest. And we've come together to really provide a kind of a vehicle that plugs gaps within the kind of provision of social finance in the region. And I will say a little bit more about that. So as you can see, that there are certain aspects to enterprises in the region here that we're trying to address with SEEDBED. And I want to say a bit more about that. The Southwest is quite an active startup region for social enterprise, as you can see from the data we've collected there. So there's a lot happening in terms of providing startup support for social enterprises and seeing social enterprises get kind of to the starting blocks. But there are growing pains. And if you kind of look at that down there, one of the kind of few things that keep coming up is lack of finance in terms of growing. And it's great to hear Dawn talking about crowdfunding as one way of kind of plugging that gap. And SEEDBED and our Accelerator program is part of that sort of new landscape of kind of vehicles, tools to kind of provide accessible finance for social enterprises that want to grow and develop. The kind of landscape of social investment in the UK, and this is probably a bit more sort of classical landscape, really started to kind of grow in kind of status and kind of reputation with the creation of big society capital, which is a few years back, which really gave a kind of a focus to the whole social investment market. And I've got a slide here that just sort of explains in an outline how big society capital is working. And it was created through money that was sitting in banks, dormant accounts. It was matched by some of the big high street banks, and we created a big pot of finance. So far, so good. The UK suddenly propelled itself to be at the forefront of social investment kind of in the world as a kind of market leader in terms of social investment. It was very early clear that the social big society capital would be a kind of what's called a wholesaler, so it wouldn't actually engage directly with social enterprises, but create a whole kind of group of intermediaries who would then interact with social enterprises. And that's where some of the problems started coming in. Because if you look at who these social enterprises are, that intermediaries are meant to kind of interact with, you get something like this. There's a whole spectrum of social enterprises, as you can see on this slide, from kind of charities to kind of purely commercial enterprises. And the kind of social enterprises are sitting somewhere on the spectrum and needing often kind of blend between investment that has a financial focus and investment that has a very social impact focus. And to kind of just look at it from a sort of different perspective, if we're kind of looking at some of the kind of comments that are coming up around the social finance gap, there's a sort of cultural issue around changing, I suppose, our expectations around from expecting the next grant to looking at our business models as social enterprises in terms of are we able to handle non-grant finance. And clearly the kind of aspects like crowdfunding that Dawn was explaining earlier on is one kind of part of that spectrum of finance that's available, and a very popular one. In fact, we've got some of our social enterprises that we've helped have then gone on to raise successful funds through the crowdfunding platform. So we're really happy that it's there. In fact, I spoke to one of our fellows this afternoon who'd raised £17,000 through Crowdfunder just recently with their mushroom growing business. So it's a very popular and accessible platform. But with SEEDBED, we were also trying to address this gap between what's available in terms of more classical finance, whether it's equity or loans, and what social enterprises really need. And interestingly, I've just picked up a comment from Dawn Ostwick, who is the chief executive of the Big Lottery Fund, addressing the issue of the social investment market within the UK. And she's talking about the launch of something, a new funding platform, which is part of the slide I gave here, which is called Access Foundation for Social Investment. And Dawn's saying, for me, today is the next stage on our journey, and a critical one at that, because this foundation and this fund are born out of a recognition that small and medium-sized organizations, often the lifeblood of civil society, have found it difficult to navigate social investment today. I think that's an understatement, but this clearly is a fact that it's been very, very difficult. And she's going on that there's a number of reasons for this. It's too expensive, too time-consuming, too complex, social and financial returns are out of balance, the language is investment speak, and so on. There are lots of reasons why this is difficult, but the hope is that this growth fund can start to complement the more scale end of the market, which I think is another term for big deals, big money. And as you can see on this slide, there are a few newer funds that are coming through, which are trying to address the needs of organizations that don't need to borrow or find 250,000, 500,000 or £1 million, which is the size of deals that the classical social investment community is looking for. So with SEEDBED and some of the other funds like Power to Change, which is the new lottery program, and the Access Foundation and their growth fund, we're trying to address the needs of organizations that may need to borrow up to £50,000, that are looking for their first loans, that are still unsure about equity finance. And in the same way that there is a journey through the crowdfunding, as Dawn explained, from what could be classed a grant or rewards-based initiative right through to equity finance through crowdfunding. In the same way, we're trying to provide a route for social enterprises to really grow into the social finance market. So how does SEEDBED work? We are, oops, that's the wrong one. We're an accelerator program. We work with early stage social ventures. That means ventures that have started up, that are probably working at the moment in a more subsistent levels with a lot of support from friends and families and an early community, and are now looking to grow their business and have outgrown that early seed funding. And I've got an interesting slide a bit later on about a particular problem that enterprises face between the early grant funding and yet commercial expectations that are there with the classical loan and equity community. So as you can see, the 15th of April is tomorrow. We've got 19 ventures that are starting out their SEEDBED journey tomorrow on the first incubator cohort or accelerator cohort. And it's a wide-ranging group. We're really excited starting working with them, from a new surf school in Cornwall, particularly focusing on the needs of children and women, through a social enterprise pub here in Plymouth, a new tweed mill restoration project on Dartmoor, an internet-based country TV station in Somerset, and a craft training program in Bristol. A wide range of social enterprises that are all looking to make that next step from having had grants, having had startup support, having had maybe the first larger sums, and are now looking to work on their business model and access loan finance. And we want to make that very accessible, and we know that what social enterprises need just as much as money is the support that goes along with that. And through our work in SEEDBED, we're expecting to support 50 enterprises over a 2-year period, of which 28 will grow on to develop and successful products and markets and play a greater role in their economies, and 10 at least will go on to take on significant investment and scale their businesses significantly. We hope to invest about £800,000 over this 2-year period. So we're kind of ready to go, we're keen to go, and it will all kick off tomorrow. Just before I guess tell a little bit more about how it works, I just wanted to put out a slide which comes from a report that was done by the Design Council last year on social finance in the UK, and they've looked particularly at the needs of startup social enterprises and those early stage, they call them shapeshifters, and in their growth, and they created this sort of matrix between market opportunity and social need and the kind of startup to a growth journey. And if you kind of look at startup, when we're kind of looking at this point of consolidation where the Design Council is sort of really saying that there is a kind of great problem for startups when they've kind of secured grant funding for their seed period, but then when they're past that, the kind of risk point for social startups is when they're past seed funding and incubation stage, but may still be prototyping or iterating their product. Some will also be in the early stages of identifying revenue streams for the right revenue model. Ventures often cover the shortfall through slowing down or scraping by. These ventures often have to shift their focus to beefing up their business model rather than addressing the social needs as they look for second stage investment. And what we're trying to do with the Accelerator program is to support ventures to kind of beef up their business model without losing sight of their social values, without losing sight of their kind of purpose proposition, by getting the right support and the right mix of finance for them together so that they don't have to forego their kind of social purpose to become more commercially successful. And we believe that our kind of intensive support that we can provide through SEEDBED can make that possible. Equally, on the kind of next slide, again from the Design Council, they've kind of looked at the needs of those what they call shape-shifting organizations, which is probably at the later stage of organizations we are working with, where again, the kind of, I suppose the tendency for these organizations is to become more commercially focused and let go of their social aims. Again, so there are two stages where this kind of dichotomy between how do I continue successfully with my kind of social purpose aim that I actually set out this enterprise with and become viable, sustainable, and income generating with my business. That's kind of the challenge we're taking on with the Accelerator program, and that's how we want to support our enterprises. So through that, we will have significant impact, we believe, with the Accelerator program. It will be one of the tools, as well as successful crowdfunding and crowd investing campaigns, to put social enterprises much more kind of into the marketplace and bring them to the awareness of people. And with that, we will help to change the way economy is viewed in the area here, and the kind of, I suppose, the platform social enterprises have in terms of negotiating deals with the public sector, bidding for successful tenders, becoming a credible business partner to other private sector businesses, and having a higher profile in the kind of public place for consumers and customers. So that's what we're kind of hoping to achieve with taking a significant number of enterprises through the SEEDBED journey. We've got a kind of three-stage program. We're kind of past the kind of recruitment and selection now for the first cohort. We have a foundation stage program where we will be looking particularly at business model development and looking at the kind of fundamentals of a successful business, and developing a development plan which will lead to more investment and entry in our kind of development stage, which is focused on products, services, customers, and markets, the kind of key areas for business, whether it's social or any kind of business. And out of that will come a kind of growth strategy where we will then bring in significant investment from our own fund as well as through secondary investors, so that these organizations that are in the kind of SEEDBED program can get the finance they need to grow, so that they're not part of that 39% who say, well, actually, if we had the finance, we could grow. So we can make that happen with SEEDBED through our kind of support program. I think that's all I just wanted to bring today.
Right, thank you.
Good.